Alright, come on, Twitch. I know that you'll eventually catch on that we're streaming. Alright, we're streaming. I'll tell the world. Streaming, game dev, gonna focus on level stuff. Paste. And then I'll just pop on over to here and say the same thing. Alright, so I'm not exactly on top of my game today. I got a bit of heat exhaustion, and it never sits too well with me, but we're going to go ahead and do some stuff anyway. So I think what we're going to do today is try and bring this level area to life, not because I plan to make it a big part of the final game, but because I have to know more about the constraints of the levels and how they feel when we start to actually do stuff with them. So that's what we're going to do today. We should be able to use mostly things that we already have. We shouldn't need to do too much in the way of new stuff. What we're going to want to do is begin to build up some cliffs and some stony outcroppings and so on. Problem I've got is that I don't have any tools for spraying debris. This is what we're going to build today. We're going to try and build a tool for creating rock faces or something, because it's very possible for me to go over here and like grab one of these rock elements, like this one, for example. I could duplicate it and then drag it down into this correct level down here and then move it in manually. But the problem is that I would have to manually tweak everything. That's fine for big objects like this. I can manually tweak these, cliff elements. But what I can't do is manually tweak a bunch of stones. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a stone sprayer, which will allow us to basically just fire stones at the edges of these areas here. Oh, that didn't work. That was weird. So basically I can put these big chunks in, and then what I'll do is I will have smaller stones get created on these big chunks according to specific rules. Now, the only issue is that we can't use any of the methods we've been using. For example, I use a particle system for some of the stuff, but the stones that we're creating really can't be particles. They're too large, and also I have to be able to specify what areas here we're going to need stones on. So what we're going to do is just create a new kind of object, which will start off as a cube. Doop, like this. And so basically what we'll be able to do is set this cube up as a volume, and within the volume we will spray our stones. So we're going to create a couple of stone prefabs, and then we're going to automatically generate them inside of a volume of our choosing. So let's get to it. Just pop on down into scripts and then create a new one, which we'll call editor. And we'll create stone sprayer or something similar. Detail spray. It's not really details though, is it? That's fine. We can change the name later if we have to. So what we'll do is we will create a bounds for this out of the... we could use the scale of this object, or we could use the cube collider that it comes with by default. There's no particular reason to use the cube collider though. You can edit the cube collider. You can drag its faces around, but not very easily. I'll show you what I mean. So if we grab this cube, here's the collider, the box collider. In order to edit the box collider, we would have to hit edit collider and then click on these. The problem is that clicking on these is actually really hard, and if you miss, it's gone. So much easier if we just use the scaling options here. So that's what we'll do. We'll just use the default scale. Because of that, we're not going to need to worry about having a box collider or a mesh renderer, so we'll just get rid of the box collider and the mesh renderer and the mesh filter. So, oh good, look, there's an update. I know there are almost never updates to Visual Studio Code, not more than once or twice a day. So let's go ahead and create a drawer. So void on draw gizmos. Yeah, you can go ahead and fuck off. There we are. What we're going to want to do here is set up the gizmos rect transform, the matrix. That's what it's called. Old equals gizmos.matrix. And then we say gizmos.matrix equals transform dot, I believe it's world to local, or local to world rather, but it might be the other way around. I can never remember. And then we just draw ourselves a cube. So gizmos.draw wire cube, vector3.0, vector3.1. And we want to set the color. Gizmos.color equals color.blue. There we are. And that should be enough to draw a bounding box around this cube. Unless we're using the wrong... Oh, I forgot to put it in. This is not a fucking editor script. Oh. Editor is a reserved keyword. That's right. I didn't change anything. I don't know why you're recompiling. There we are. All right, so now we've got it. You can see how we got the blue outline. I think that blue outline's a little bit too light. We'll go ahead and create our own. We'll go and create kind of just a very bright cyan color. No, we won't. Why is this not... Oh. No. That's definitely not supposed to be this color anymore. Huh. What's going on here? A new color. Am I know that this is pure blue, so why isn't it giving us a different shade here? Huh. What in the world? Why is it stuck being blue? What? How is it still blue? Did this break because Unity doesn't understand that I didn't want it in the fucking... Yeah. You're a fucking idiot, Unity. God damn. This is not the most clever interface. So it didn't realize... you can call it my fault. The IDE didn't realize that I was forced to rename and move the detail spray class. And I should have realized that it was recreated from scratch because it had to recompile, and it had to recompile for about 15 minutes for some reason. So I'm not sure that any of the things I was doing were actually editing the correct file. Fuck you. Go away. Go away. All of this stuff, go away. All right, so here's the problem. New color 0, 1F, 1F. Now, it's a good thing we realized that before we got any further, or else I would have done a lot of annoying things. It's funny that the console didn't give us any warnings or anything. Should have said something like, hey, dumbass, there's like 80 things named the same thing, but it didn't. And that's because having the directory named editor automatically creates a namespace, apparently. So that's a fun thing to think about. Not sure I like that, but this is proceeding fine despite our stupidity. So let's go ahead and create some detail elements. So to create the detail elements, we are going to want to have a couple of GameObject meshes. So we'll call them prefabs. Oh, that's an array, yeah. And all we really need to do is also specify a number. And then what we'll have is a function we can call to populate. I'll just make this a menu. We can call that in edit mode rather than play mode, and it'll create the objects for us. And what we'll do here in populate is we'll create the game objects we want to create. Problem is we don't want those game objects to be part of the base transform. We want to put them inside of a parent. Excuse me, of a parent. So what we're going to do is when we instantiate the prefabs, we're going to put them inside of something. We could put them inside of ourselves, but I prefer to make this a tool that we can just kind of wave around and not carry the stones with us. So we're going to make them the parent is our parent. We're going to put them at the same place we are currently at. So all we need to do is do a for int a equals 0, a is less than number, a plus plus. We'll go ahead and set number to have a default of 5. And we'll just create the objects. So GameObject G equals GameObject.instantiate prefab random.range 0 prefabs.count.length, one of those things. And we're going to want to put that inside of our parent. There it is. You can see how it's asking us for a vector for position, a quaternion for rotation, and a transform for parent. We're going to want those things. So vector 3p, vector or quaternion q. And so we're going to pass it in p, q, and then transform.parent. That should be easy enough. I don't even think we need to give it the game object here, but what we do need to do is set these up. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use some getters and setters just to make things a little easier for us. So public vector 3 position, or I believe I actually had a name for this. I was calling it something specific in another object. It wasn't position, it was location, because position is reserved in Unity. Get. All we're going to do is get a position that is within our bounding element, within our bounding region. To do this, there's a lot of different ways. What we're going to do is we're going to create a random vector, and then we're going to transform it. So in order to do that, we can say random dot, and then unfortunately for us, there is no random value in a vector 3. There's no just get me a random vector 3. The closest we've got is random.value, so we'll just get 3 of those, right? No, not a big deal. So vector 3p equals new vector 3 random.value, random.value, and random.value. Now that gets us a vector between 0 and 1. What we actually want is a vector between -1 and 1. So we could go with range instead of value, I guess. That's fine. We'll do this instead. There. And then all we do is we run this through our transform. So p equals transform dot local to world. It's not called that. It's called transform point. Let's make sure that that's in the correct direction. I sometimes forget which one's which. Come on, give me the summary. There it is. Local space to world space. And then we just return it. So we'll just go return transform point dot b. There we are. That'll give us a point within our bounding box. So down here, when we get this, we can just delete this and make this location. For Q, we can go ahead and do the same thing. There's no reason to nest it into that function. Just we might have other things we want to do with that. what we're going to want to do is create a random quaternion. Unfortunately for us, random quaternions are not really ideal. They're not as random as they appear. So what we're going to do is start with an identity quaternion, and then we're going to apply 2 random rotations, or just 1 random rotation. So we can multiply this by quaternion dot rotate rotate towards. No, we want to rotate around. From to rotation, right? No, it's angle axis. There it is. Our axis angle. I think these are the same thing. So we'll just do random dot range -90 to negative 180 to 180 for the angle. Except for I'm not sure if that angle is in degrees or radians. Degrees, okay. And then we give it the axis. For the axis, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and, you know what? There we are. And so what we'll do here is we'll just go ahead and replace this with a random vector. Boom. So here what we'll do is we'll pass it a random vector dot normalize. Yeah. So that'll rotate us a random number of degrees around a random vector. But I don't think we need quaternion.identity. I think quaternion.identity is part of it. So we'll just return this. And obviously it's not called location, it's called rotation, or yeah, that's fine. We'll call it rotation. That's also a reserved keyword though. Called random rotation. There we are. So what we've got now is the ability to create an arbitrary number of random prefabs in a random place, in a random arbitrary location, or rotation. That's all pretty basic stuff. What we don't have is a list. Oh, it looks like it's not actually compiling. There we are. There we go. So at this point what we need is some prefabs. We actually have some, so let's just go ahead and stick them in. We're just going to grab the prefabs that I bought. No reason to make our own when we've got ones that already exist. So down here in the rocks section, there it is. These. They're not all the same size is the issue. So there's going to be some that are very small and some that are quite large. We'll have to maybe adjust that, remove some of them based on that. But there it is. We've got all of the objects that we want. Let's go ahead and test it. Save to make sure, just in case we do something stupid. That's strange. I don't know what it was trying to save, but it wasn't trying to save the scene. Weird. Anyway, here what we're going to do now is just hit this populate button, and you can see how we've got a bunch of rocks. Now the rocks are not where I thought they would be. They all seem to be in the same spot. No, wait, they're not. Where are all these rocks? Well, they are certainly scattered around. This is interesting. What did I screw up? Because this is nowhere near where the object is. My assumption is that when I told them to have a position, they have a local position rather than a global position. Not great. We're going to go ahead and delete them. I think that what we're going to need to do is down here when we create them, we're going to have to pass them a vector 0 and then move them. There we go. I think I can just remove these. Now the reason I have to do this is because when we pass them in here, it seems like it's trying to use world coordinates instead of... see how I've got the instantiate in world space rather than instantiate in local space? Problem is, instantiate in world space is not compatible with specifying the position and rotation. See, there's no option here for specifying whether it's in world space, so we have to do it manually. It's not a big deal. I could do it in here by transforming the point twice. Doesn't seem to be any reason to do that. So it's not something that happens during gameplay. We're not going to have to worry about optimizing it too much. It's all good. So here we are, and let's go ahead and try it again. Let's just move this box so that it's more visible, and then populate. Those are not in the box. They're kind of randomly scattered around. Oh, okay, so it looks like one of these things is actually a cluster of rocks, pebbles. Let's get rid of the pebbles. I don't think that I want that in this particular sprayer. There might be another sprayer where I use pebbles, but for this one, I just need the rocks. Still, rocks or not, they're not in the spot they're supposed to be. Let's try it one more time, see if we can track down what's going on here. Yeah, so they're being created in places that are nowhere near being inside of that bounding box we've created. There is some question as to whether they are within double the bounding box we've created. But I don't think they are even. No, they might be. They might be within double the bounding box we've created. The reason I'm saying that is because there is this drawn area may be half the size it's supposed to be. We've talked about this before in the last section. So what we can do is we can just multiply this by 2 and see whether or not that now contains these stones. Yeah, so they are in fact spawning more or less correctly. I'm not 100% sure that they are all inside of the boundary, but that's something we can fix by changing the size. Oh no, there we are, something like this. Populate. All right, so you can see that they are pretty clearly inside of the bounding box at this point. Problem being, of course, the bounding box is not correctly shaped yet. That's fine. We can just squish it down. Let's turn off the lighting so I can see what we're doing. And basically what we're going to want to do is turn this into like a wedge that we can move around into places and you know, disguise these edges. Yeah, something like that. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Okay, so there's something wrong here. It's only creating them at the extremes. It looks like it's probably doing an integer multiply instead of a float multiply. So we'll just make sure it understands that those are supposed to be floats. Mifa says, "Didn't you do something similar in your space crawler project?" Oh yeah, I've done sprayers thousands of times, but I always recreate them from scratch because it's a great warm up. These are not things that need to be complicated, and every one of them is a little bit different in terms of the heuristics that it uses. So the other thing we've got to do is create a scaling function. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we're going to do is inside of the sprayer, we're going to need to create a, that's not how you spell it, a curve. No. And we'll just go ahead and do a 0, 1, 1, 3. And that we can adjust, so we'll just go ahead and create a new one of these, which is going to be a random scale. Float scale equals this.scale.evaluate random.value, and then we say return new vector3 scale. Very basic, right? And all we need to do is set the scale here. So g.transform.local scale equals random scale. Did I call it random scale or just scale? I think I just called it scale. No, I called it random scale. Random scale. I think the thing I called scale is an animation curve. So we're going to call this a scale curve, just so that we don't get confused. I'm operating on a pretty limited brain power today, so that's why I'm kind of being really aggressive about creating things in a way that's easy to expand later. So here's our sprayer again, if it finishes recompiling at some point. Here we are. And then this is the curve, and you can see that it's just a standard linear curve. We can adjust it later if we want. The key here is that it's not from 0 to 1, it's from 1 to 3. I think we're actually going to want to make it like from 5 to 3. I think that 1 to 3 is the wrong option here, because these rocks are pretty small. There we are. That's more like what I have in mind. So you can see that basically using this tool, we can just kind of sculpt these objects by adding in stones wherever we want them to be added in. And then we can even adjust the stones if we feel like they're not in the right spot or they're not the right size. For example, this stone here, kind of floating. So what we can do is simply move it back and down until it's, hiding the edge that we want it to hide. All of these stones can use this GPU instanced material. At least they should. Yeah, this seems like they all do. So that means that we don't have to worry about having a lot of them. We'll cull them when we need to cull them, but just in general, there's not going to be a big problem with having a lot of these stones. They are going to be GPU instanced. If we were doing mobile, I wouldn't be able to do this. We're not. Here you can see that we've got plenty of stones, but none that hide the actual spot we want to hide. So we'll just move this one. Rick Metalster says, so the game, hold on, let me move this so I can actually see the chat. For some reason, it's always off on the right-hand side. So the game was in space, not this desert. We'll be moving between planets, or did I scrap the space project now? This is actually underwater. And I had several space projects. One of them was completed. One of them didn't turn out to be any fun, and so I scrapped it. So I'm not sure if you're talking about the one I scrapped or the one I completed, but we're now in a diving game. The last one, which is presumably the space one that was supposed to be all about randomly generated missions and tweaking spaceships. Unfortunately, it didn't play. I played it. I made some prototypes off screen. Some paper and some on the computer, and none of them ended up being interesting. The way that the missions unfolded wasn't compelling, even when they were hand-authored missions. So that's why I switched. I figured that it was better to switch and just start over with something that would actually be fun, instead of pushing through for something that would just be terribly boring. That was my idea anyway. So here you can see that it creates a wall of ragged stone. Now obviously this wall of ragged stone is not the most believable construct on its own. But here's the thing. This is just a random panel that we created. What happens if we take all these rocks out and this smooth cliff? What happens if we, take the spray out for a second here. What happens if we arrange this such that it is a little bit more interesting? There are actually several kinds of cliffs, including a rounded one. So let's go ahead and grab this 90-degree cliff. There it is. And again, we're going to have to come down here and change this to a 90-degree cliff. And we don't want it to be convex because it's going to be concave. So you can see that what we can do is we can easily create a set of cliffs that serves well enough, but we have to hide the seams. Werbis says, hello. Hello, Werbis. Creating a diving game, just kind of working on the level system at the moment, trying to figure out how the levels get generated in the easiest way. So if we kind of adjust this like so, there we are. This will be like our pocket area. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and create an empty object, which we'll call pocket. We'll drop the cliffs inside of it along with the sprayer, all this stuff. Boom. And now the sprayer, we can move around into positions that we think will help us hide the low poly meshes. So the idea is you use low poly meshes that are small to hide low poly meshes that are large, rather than creating high poly meshes. It's a basic principle. Boom. And then over here. Boom. I should really create a shortcut key for that, but offhand I don't remember the way to do that. There is a way, I just don't have it memorized. So boom. Boom. And now what we can do is we can expand it and start to create like more aggressive elements over here. Rick Meadowster says, can you give me a rundown about this game? Sure, this is a diving game. Basically, I wanted to make a diving game because after my last space game, I got a lot of people, like 3, which is a lot for me, saying that I should make a diving game. So that's what I'm doing. The diving game's basic idea here is it's going to have a couple of features that most diving games don't have to try and make it more interesting than your average diving game. Most diving games are pretty low on things like playability. They tend to be just, you wander around and look at fish. This diving game is not going to be a combat diving game or anything like that, but I'm using some basic investigation gameplay where you uncover things. So for example, if you come down here, you might find a ruined hab. Rather than simply finding a ruined hab and like scanning it for, I don't know, fish points, you actually reconstruct what happened to the hab piecemeal, and every step of the way, a hologram pops in and shows you the reconstructed hab, or the or sends you off to a new location where you can find a dead diver or an abandoned something or other, something else that helps you fill in the puzzle. And the idea being that as you fill in the puzzle, the holograms actually recreate the situation for you. It's not going to be entirely a detective game because I know that some people don't particularly like to detect things. So it's one of those things where that's the kind of game you'll play if you want to do like actual gameplay. But you're perfectly welcome to just wander around and look at fish if that's all you care about. So what we're going to do now is duplicate this sprayer. We'll call this a pebble sprayer. And basically we'll just drop in the pebbles. The boom. Boom. And the boom. We're going to go ahead and try that again. Oh, that's fine. And over here in the detail sprayer, we're going to have the option to disable rotation. Public bool random rotation equals true. Down here in random rotation, we're going to say if random rotation, then this, otherwise return quaternion.identity. Oh, let me close these blinds. I can no longer see my screen. It's like 105 today. Randomize rotation. There we are. So Rick Middlester says, if you have an idea about what other games do and find them boring, then I'm up to hanging around and being interested. A played a bit of the recent survival diving game and found it boring as hell. Okay, so are you talking about Subnautica, or are you talking about the new Subnautica that's in pre-alpha? The first Subnautica. That's interesting. Very few people find the first Subnautica boring as hell. Most people that stop playing it because it gets pretty scary. Like, not in a way that's like, oh no, I'm scared, but in a way that's like, oh my god, my nerves just can't take the unending pressure. But I can understand why you might find it a little dull. I'm not sure whether or not you got far enough to get to the part where the spook starts to get in, but Subnautica is fundamentally a survival crafting game. It's all about finding crap. This is not going to be like that. There's not going to be any focus on collecting 8,000 pieces of iron to build your next base or whatever. There might be some scary stuff in this, but it'll all be scripted scary stuff, and there's going to be some resource stuff in it, but it's not that kind of resource game. So the resources would be mission resources. So we're going to go ahead and flatten out this and scale it up. Yoink. And make sure that we're in the right spot here, which is right there. And basically we can just tell it to create some pebbles. See how there's some nice little pebbles here? They're too small, so what we're going to want to do there is actually change this. There we are. Now, there are better tools for this, but unfortunately, I don't know any of them. I'm not sure how to create a sprayer where I can actually just point and spray. I wish I did. That didn't work out, did it? They all got stuck over there for some reason. That's better. All right, so let's just take a look at this and see whether or not it plays. Yeah, so I can definitely see that if you don't like survival crafting games where you just have to continually look for shit, you're not going to like Subnautica's first 2 hours or 3 hours even. And that's perfectly fine. I certainly don't hold that against you. This game won't have any survival crafting elements, so, you know. So I'm just kind of playing around to see whether or not this is a reasonable way to do it. We get some slowdown here. I can't tell if it's a frame rate drop or just a camera problem. We'll look into that later, though. What I'm trying to figure out right now is how I would like to handle this sort of setup. The basic idea here is pretty good. We got some floating rocks, which is just due to me not trying very hard. But the basic idea is pretty solid. So what we're going to do... I'm trying to think of ways to make a real sprayer. And I'm thinking... Well, I actually am not thinking. I'm just sort of blankly staring ahead. So never mind. I don't actually have any clues as to how to create a real sprayer. But the point here is that the sprayer isn't going to be able to be the be-all and end-all of our level design. I was just testing it to see whether or not I would be able to do... be able to rely on the sprayer a lot, and I can't. The problem with this is that the sprayer doesn't break up the monotony of a flat surface. So what that means is that this sprayer here is not going to be enough to make these kinds of areas interesting. We're going to need to have other methods to break up the flat surface. But the sprayer was never intended to make these areas interesting. I was doing that just as kind of a test. It was intended to break up cliff faces. So let's go ahead and just finish breaking up this cliff face to see whether or not it actually does that job as it's supposed to. I think we're going to go for 7 rocks. I probably should put in an undo, but I didn't. So let's go ahead and change this again. I think that I had it right with the object sprayer. We'll go ahead and have it like that. And then, of course, we will try it one more time. Populate. All right, so now we got larger rocks, but they're kind of floating. And this is going to be a core issue that I think we're going to have. I think what we're going to want to do is make it so the sprayer can embed these objects. So what we're going to do is create a spray vector. And I can repurpose this later once I start to understand how to actually create a real spray setup. So we're going to allow ourselves to see what direction down is. And we're going to do it from vector 3.0 to vector 3.forward. And that's going to be the direction that we are trying to drop our rocks. And if we take a look, it is that way. See that? It's almost invisible due to the fact that it's buried inside of the object. See, there it is. So what we'll do is we'll draw another wire cube down at the bottom here. So that's going to be vector 3.forward, and that's going to be vector 3 dot new vector 3 2 2 and 0.01. There we are, something like that. And that should just create like a box on the bottom. There, perfect. That way we'll be able to tell what we're actually dropping towards. And you can see that we're just using the wrong axis right now, so we'll just change the axes around. No problems. I think to make it extra clear, what we'll do is we will make this smaller. There it is. So the idea here is that we will push all of the rocks in that direction, or all of the debris in that direction, until they stop, or something. So that's what we'll do. So for that, what we'll have is when we create our object, we're going to want to, instead of just using a location, we're going to want to have a location that is broadcast straight down. So to do that, we will go ahead and create this. I guess we'll use P because L looks too much like a 1. And then we'll go ahead and return P. But in between there, we're going to actually do a physics raycast. So raycast hit if physics.raycast, and then we can pass it in an origin, which is going to be P, a direction, which is going to be transform.forward, and then a max distance, which I guess we'll just make the max distance like 15. And hopefully there is a function to pass it an out hit. For some reason it's not really giving me the right options and not letting me... There we are. I don't know why it was being an ass. I got them backwards. I always get them backwards somehow. There we are. So if we manage to do a raycast and hit something, then we just say return hit.point. So that's easy enough, right? We just broadcast it straight down, and when it hits something, we stop. If it doesn't hit anything, we just return it where it was. Let it grind for a little bit. There we go. And then what we'll do is we'll hit it again and see whether or not it works. Boom. So you can see how now they are all embedded into the surface of the sand. And we can target much more aggressively to try and get particular spots sprayed, although I don't think we need 7 at this point. See? So let's go ahead and spray over here. I think there's a faster way to move things around, but I can never get Unity's more advanced move features under control. They always end up... Fucking click on the thing that's right in front of us. Thank you. A downside of not having an object that is physically there is that you click through it. So what we can do is we can just aim the sprayer. We don't have to worry about getting the precise location because it uses a raycast to spot it against the surface. So boom, like so. And then if we want to do the bottom, we can simply rotate it more. Boom. Only question is, yeah, none of these actually have colliders. We'll have to deal with that. So this whole thing I've just done, we're going to have to redo. But the point was, this is not a permanent level. This is just a test level. So the idea here is, can we make these cliffs look reasonable just using a sprayer and one texture? So-so. One of the issues is, of course, that this particular cliff face is just a jumble. There's going to be like an actual surface, so the tops that I haven't done anything with are not. You can ignore those. One of the problems is this kind of cliff face is very specific. It's a one type of cliff face. It doesn't have the some of the more fun underwater cliff elements. But that's something we can do later. We can have multiple kinds of cliffs. But the point here is that we've got this lovely jumble of rocks, and it only took us like 10 seconds to put it in, aside from the 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes it took to program it. So that is the basic setup that I was aiming for. But the problem is that the surface here, this flat surface, is too flat. It's very, very hard for us to feel like this surface is viable. There's two solutions for that. One is to make it less flat, and the other is to put textures on it. So let's try both. So if we click on here, we can go over into the painting section. We only have one texture right now. Let's add another texture. Let's see if we can find something that's not this grotesquely pale sand. We'll just go with a darker sand, like this one. And once again, we'll choose blue noise. And let's make the size a little bit different, just so that it feels a little bit less aligned, you know what I mean? So we'll just pick this. Yeah, that's all good. Sound is good, water bubble's good, Finch is good, sand not so much. So this is very primitive sand. I haven't done anything with the fixes, he says. I'm not sure which fixes he means. I haven't done anything with this yet. So the sand is just the default sand that comes with Unity. And what I'm trying to determine is whether or not I can make the bottom of the ocean seem appealing with very little work, or whether I have to do a lot of work. So another thing that is worth considering is that we can put in a ton of things like fog effects and stuff like that to try and make this a little bit more appealing. But if it's flat, it's going to be flat. There's just nothing I can do to make it less flat without making it less flat or covering it in something. So what we're going to want to do is try and see whether or not flat can be okay, or whether flat is just not going to work. Now, I know that in the case of most diving games, there just is no flat. Never anything flat. In the actual ocean, there is a surprising amount of flat, but I don't think I can make it work in a game. I think that this is too flat. Too flat. All right, so let's go ahead and perturb it and see whether or not I can make it work. So make a fog effect like the sand is being revolved. I can certainly make fog effects. I'm not sure what you mean by revolved. Like someone stuck their hand in this. Oh, you mean like silt? Yeah. So I actually already do have some silt effects in the game, but I'm not sure why they would exist without someone actually stirring them up too much. But let's go ahead and add in some of the fog effects and see whether or not it can start to look good. First, I want to see if just a little bit of disruption like this is going to be enough to make it more convincing, because this is just roughing up the surface instead of having it be supernaturally flat. Just to see whether or not this feels like it is more approachable and less fake. Now, this is still without any sort of plants or anything. This is just bare sand. It's definitely better. Obviously, the brushes I used need some work, but it doesn't feel anywhere near as unnatural. So let's go ahead and just smooth out some of the wibbles and wobbles because they were a little bit aggressive. There we are. So we can actually create all sorts of fun areas. Volcanic areas are a good example. I already have effects for a lot of the things we're talking about. So let's start to put a couple of them in. This is not a volcanic area, it's a sand pit. But I think it's worth trying some of that stuff out. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this incredibly ugly sidebar that never goes away even if you tell it to, and create a fog effect. So to do that, we just have to select a volume with the shape of a box, and we'll just put it in here. And obviously that's ended up kind of strangely hidden, but that's okay. We'll just pack it in like that. And what this is it's a volumetric fog. The problem with the volumetric fog is that it's not really intended to represent water. We'll talk about that later. But the basic idea here is exactly how much volumetric fog comes with the default volumetric fog box. And you can see that what we've got here is not a whole lot. In fact, it's really pretty minimal until we get deep into it. Even then, it's pretty minimal. So what we can do is, one of the problems is that it's, for some reason, it's a strange blue color. What we can do is we can turn the ambient lighting down to negative something, turn the density up to maybe 20 or so. If we look at the game, I'm trying to figure out, I can't see the fog. There was a setting that would allow me to see the fog. I don't see it. Here it is. But it's actually, I can't tell if that's on or off. Setting is in lightning window. The lighting window is not the fog I'm talking about. This is a separate fog plugin. It was this button here, but I'm not sure whether it was on or off. It was off. Okay, so for some reason it's not displaying anymore. I'll figure that out some other day. But what I'm trying to get is a really dense volumetric fog, and as you can see, this volumetric fog is nowhere near dense enough. It is barely dense at all, even with the density turned up to like 30. And I'm not really sure why that is. But you can see that if I change the fade fall off, it becomes quite a bit more pronounced. So I guess the problem was the fade fall off. So let's go ahead and do that. If we go back to scene, we'll want to re-enable it because I think the fade fall off might be what was showing us problems here. No, even at 0, I can't see it. That's interesting. Either way, let's go ahead and take a look. Come on, play. What? Is the fade fall off of 0.2 still too high? Interesting. Okay. Apparently, a fade fall off of 0.2 is still too high. I have a feeling that the problem is these fade elements here. I'm not sure why they're being so aggressive and clunky and bad. But we'll go ahead and just set it to 0. We can try and tweak the values some other day. There we are. Even at 0, I can't see it. Wait, so it's different depending on whether I had... Wait, what's going on here? So as you can see, there's not a whole lot of fog in the game. Okay, so setting it to 0 changes things radically if I do it during play mode. But if I do it outside of play mode, it doesn't. That's strange. Let's go ahead and move the player so that I can see the objects that we're trying to edit. Yeah, so we should be able to see the fog down here on the camera. So, I can't see it. Okay, so it apparently only really works in play mode. But in play mode, it doesn't really function. So let's go ahead and move these all the way to the right, see what that does. So I'm a little bit... I'm not hugely impressed by Aura 2. It's definitely made big strides since Aura 1 in terms of it being relatively easy to use. But it's got a lot of issues that make it very difficult to actually deal with, like what we're looking at now, for example. One of the bigger problems is that it also permanently reserves this corner of your screen. You can technically make this go away, but then whenever you go to the scene, all of the icons rush across the screen and hide away. It's very distracting. Everything bounces and moves around. So this toolbox is a good idea, except for it's the thing that takes over your project, and you can never get rid of it. Furthermore, the fog in question has a lot of idiosyncrasies, like what we're doing now. I can't figure out how to make this fog just work, and that's not good. So you can see how it kind of tweaks out. There's a lot of strange constraints where it'll work or it won't work kind of randomly. And you can see how we get a radically different appearance depending on the exact angle of the camera. Werba says, can you turn it off in some kind of preferences menu? If there is a preferences menu, I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware of a separate preferences menu for Aura 2. Here's some settings. Let's go ahead and check it. Display gizmos on cameras. Those are all fine. No. Here it is. So we have the option to disable the toolbox, but not to make it not be annoying. Oh, there. Good. Good call. There is, in fact, an obnoxious animation thing that we can turn off. Great. Cool. So another part of the problem I've got with the fog is... the way that we inject data is a little bit broken, or at least a little bit opaque. It doesn't really tell us what's going on. I often find that when I'm editing one piece of fog, all of the other pieces of fog will magically have the same values all of a sudden. And that makes it very challenging to set up scenes with more than one fog volume. So, it's never quite as easy as I want it to be. See, in this case, the fog should be here, and it doesn't even appear until we're inside of it, at which point it's super thick. So I think what's going on here is that I wanted the volumetric fog to be visible from outside, but you can see how what actually happens... I think I understand something I didn't understand before. So I think what's happening here is that the fog volume... the outer edge of the fog volume is where it's visible from. I get it now. Okay. That is fine. I can deal with that. So if the outer edge of the fog volume is the visibility area, then what we'll do is we will simply adjust the fog. like that. Well, it could be something like that, Werbus, but if so, they didn't explain it. Ooh, obviously, it's way too dense now because we set the density to 20. All right, so now that I understand the fog system a little bit better than I did a couple minutes ago, we can start to work on making it not suck. All right, so let's go ahead and just tweak this so that it is on the ground. That's not the right one. My bad. There we are. So if we put it on the ground, we don't want it to be under the ground. That's just a waste of processing power. There we are, like that. That's still a little bit below the ground, but that should be okay. And then what we'll do is we'll add in our noise mask, because the noise mask makes everything fun. Not being able to see it in scene view is still irksome. I don't know why that's happening. I used to be able to see it in scene view, and now I can't. Whatever. So what I really want to do here is really, really limit the height map. Like, you know, like this. Because I only want the fog to appear. Okay, so now let's adjust the fade fall off, because I think the fade fall off is now what's causing us to have the wrong values. I think it was default to 3. Let's go ahead and just set it to 3 here, because I know that in play mode it screws up. That made it disappear. That's not what it was supposed to do. All right. So let's turn off the noise mask for a second. I need to get the kind of core density here working. As you can see, as we move down into the fog, it becomes denser. And this is the core problem I have with this volumetric fog. It's volumetric fog inside the camera rather than in the world. I haven't figured out how to put the fog into the world. All I've figured out how to do is make it... Oh, look, it appeared in the game setting here, but I still can't see it here. I haven't really figured out how to make it behave like I want. I want to be able to put in a piece of fog and have it be visible, just period. But I don't want it to... I don't really know what to do about this, because as I think we learned, if we are outside of this box, the fog doesn't render at all. So it's really bright in my room. I'm not actually sure if the fog is rendering or not, but it's certainly not rendering at density 20. And then it just suddenly, boom, right? Now this is a fine effect for when we're in a situation that needs it. But I think that if I'm going to be using fog, I might just use a particle effect. Because clearly the volumetric fog is not working out. I've been trying it for half an hour now, and it's still barely functional. So let's create some particle effect fogs. This is going to be a very useful tool. We'll just create one and then duplicate it a million times later on. Werbus is linked to an asset store. Height fog for post-processing stack. I really wish that some people would actually type what their product is in the description of their product. The description of height fog for post-processing stack is reduced price while in beta. Support the development by ordering today. Before buying, please note that I don't know what it is. You need to actually tell me what your product is. What is this, Blender? Okay, so I can't use the reduced height, the height post-processing stack that you are suggesting, because it is not compatible with transparencies, and this game is heavily hologram-based. It's okay though. We'll just go ahead and use some particles. No biggie. Boom, particles. So particles are kind of in the middle of nowhere. We're going to bring them down. Yoink. And so let's see whether or not we can create some good silt effects. Should be pretty straightforward. We've already got like 90% of the things we need. It's just a matter of creating them. So we can do it as a rectangle or a box. I think a box is a better choice. And then we can adjust the size and scale of the box like so. Now, obviously, the particles shouldn't be moving, so let's just kill their speed. Boom. And then what we'll do is we'll set up the correct particle material, which is, unsurprisingly, dust cloud. I'm not sure whether or not I have a better material. I don't think so. I could use a fog card, I guess. That would be an interesting choice. Kind of the opposite of what I need. So let's go ahead and adjust this until it is what we want it to be. First things first, we're going to just drop the simulation speed down to 0.01 and turn on pre-warm. That way we'll be able to set this up nice and easy. We're going to just create the size. Start size will be a random between two constants of 5 and 30. No, 30 is way too big. 5 and 10. 10 is too big. 5 and 5, I guess. Just do 3 and 5. And then we'll do a rate over time of 100. And then that'll give us a fog effect. We can lower the density of the fog by reducing the alpha. The problem is that this is additive fog, I believe. Yeah, no, it's alpha blended fog. Okay, so that means that we can just change the color to be yellow. There, that'll be a sandy fog now. And then, of course, we're going to want to have them move in and out of alpha over their lifetime, because otherwise they will pop in and out really distractingly. The other thing we're going to want to decide on is whether we want them to move. I don't think we do. I think it's fine if they don't move. So we're just going to go ahead and call this a fog. Volumetric fog. I'm not sure what Werbis says with, he just says, it is not my, which I'm not really sure how to parse. I like, so the big problem isn't that I don't have the assets I need. The big problem is that the assets aren't compatible with each other. The one that you recommended would work fine if I was using Post-Processing Stack 2 and no transparencies. I'm using a lot of transparencies and I'm not using Post-Processing Stack 2. I might be if I actually don't know whether I am or not. 2018.3, which is substantially after mine, has a renewed post-processing system. That's interesting, Mifaz, but it's only for the high-definition pipeline, which I'm not using. I might use the high-definition pipeline for a different project down the line, though, and I'll definitely take that into account. In this case, you can see that what we've done is we've created ourselves some fake volumetric fog, just using particle effects. Now, the problem with this approach is that it's super crisp. You can see how it's just a specific height. We don't really want that. I'm going to go ahead and break that up a little bit. Sorry if I coughed into the mic there. For some reason, I started suddenly getting really itchy throat. So we're going to go ahead and change the simulation space into world. And I think that we don't really need to do anything else. What I can do, I can have it have like a downwards force so they slowly settle down out of the water. But I don't think that'll do what we want it to. I think that'll actually make things worse. Let's go ahead and just try it like this. Oh, the new post-processing stack is for the standard PBR pipeline as well. That might be worth upgrading for. So here you can see that what we've got is a very definitely a cube of fog, which is just a little bit unrealistic because that's not how fog works. I think what we actually want to do is use nested fog effects. So if I duplicate this volumetric fog and put it inside here and move this one up. No? Where is it? Why is it not showing me the emission shape? Oh, there it is. No, that's not it. That's the other emission shape. It's very strange. Well, it's okay. All we really need to do is bring down the rate over time to like 20. And that'll create a surface fog that just kind of breaks up that cubic nature. Yeah, so here you can see that it's no longer quite as solidly cubical because we have things that are rising above the surface. We're going to want to drop down the volumetric fog density here. I think that 100 is too high. 50 is probably more like it. Yeah, we'll go ahead and give that a shot. Rick Meadowster says it looks good. It certainly looks better than the volumetric fog from Aura 2. But that is just because the volumetric fog from Aura 2 is something I don't understand. I'm sure that you could create quite a nice fog effect out of it. So here you can see how it looks. And you'll notice that what it does is it doesn't really render close to the character. So you can always see the ground. You never feel like you're completely lost in the fog. And the reason for that is because the particle softness or smoothness or whatever it's called is set really high. Where did it go? Okay, so that's the opposite of what I wanted. There we are. Yeah, that's a little bit more like it. We get a little bit of grit in the camera using it like this, and that's what I want. I want the camera to feel like it's actually in the water, giving you grit. All right, so that is not a bad fog effect, at least for now. It does have some downsides. For example, it doesn't get any lighting effects on it, including the light of your camera, or your headlamp. That is not great. I would prefer it to get lighting, but the problem is that I think lighting is pretty expensive. Well, I can turn on receive shadows, but that's not the same as receiving lighting. So the particle's alpha blended is fundamentally an unlit particle. If we were to... that's not what I wanted. What are the particles? There's really no... I mean, there is a lit one. It's a standard surface here. But that's... I don't think that's going to work. We'll go ahead and give it a shot, I guess. I think it's going to be too expensive is the problem. Well, let's give it a shot. Let's see. Werba says that Unity lighting gives him a lot of headaches. Yeah, Unity lighting is not the best. There are lots of problems with it. So I can understand that. So this is it with the standard surface instead of the unlit. And I don't know if you can tell the difference, especially on YouTube. I am not 100% sure that this is a lit surface. You can see how the whole thing kind of pulses between black and white. See that? Fucking weird. Alright, well, we'll just use it as a standard particles alpha blended. We can even do the pre-multiply. That's fine too. So Rick Metalster says that it nearly disappeared. It's actually not that it nearly disappeared. It's that it turned black, which on Twitch I'm sure is barely visible. Because you know, that's how Twitch works. All right, so pre-multiply is no good, but this one works. The issue here is that we're not going to be able to get super realistic effects out of this due to the unlit nature of these particles. I could do some tricks. I could try to create light cards that kind of float in your light stream as you move through fog. Don't think it's worthwhile at this point. We'll go ahead and just call this okay for now. Obviously, in the long run, we're going to need to do a lot of stuff. This is just a primitive first try. So let's just try one more thing. If I duplicate this volumetric fog, pull it out here, and then move it, I don't know why it's not allowing me to see the emission shape. Oh, there it is. You have to press down on the shape box. All right. What I want to try and do here is see whether or not I can create an effect that kind of pours down. So what we'll do, it's hard to see what's going on because of the other thing I've got right there. That's probably good enough. What we'll do is we will set the scale back to simulation speed back to 1. Let's set the start lifetime to 60. Might as well set the duration to 60. And then we're going to set the start speed 0.1 to 0.5. And then we're just going to see, you can see how that ends up being like really aggressive in terms of how it looks. It's like a column of smoke rather than what we're aiming for. So what we're going to want to do is make it so that these have, first off, I don't think we need 25 is probably more like it. And second off, we're probably going to want to add some noise. So let's go ahead and just pop noise. You can see how it's way too strong. So we'll just bring it down to, I can't see it. There we are. To 0.05. That might be too little. 0.1. There we are. So now that's what we've got for some basics here. Let's go ahead and just take a look at how that feels. Yeah, so the idea here is that we want to use a combination of meshes and particle effects to build the world. So I'm kind of exploring some possible particle effects here. This particle effect is very basic in that it doesn't have any collision data. Let's go ahead and see. Well, I can't give it collision data. None of these rocks have collision data, so never mind. I could give it collision data against the ground. That might be worth trying. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Got custom data, sub-emitters collision. Turn on collision. We'll go ahead and have it collide against the world and just see what happens. It's going to fall through the rocks because the rocks don't have they don't have colliders. The rocks look very good. They don't have colliders, but they look good. These are one of the few times I've bought something off of the asset store and just been like, oh, perfect. The rock asset turned out really good. In case you're wondering, it's called rocks. It might be called something else in the asset store, but when you import it, it's called rocks. So the reason that the collision data might be useful is because it makes the end of life portion of these much more useful to us because it bounces off the ground and disperses correctly. Rock Pack. My bad. It's called Rock Pack. This is not the only texture that comes with it, but this is the only one I'm using in this scene. Let's go ahead and... yeah, I guess that's fine for now. So we're going to need to create some other assets, plants, so on. Here's the thing. You can use the detail mesh painter. But the problem with this detail mesh painter is that it only does a couple of things. You can add a detail mesh, but the detail mesh can't have a material, or rather can't have a texture. Or you can use a grass texture, in which case it can't have a mesh. There's a lot of grass textures we can use. I'll have to create one of my own eventually. This one's called seagrass, but I'm not sure that it's actually intended to be used as a grass as a grass texture. We do not want it to be bright green. That would be overkill. There we go. Let's go ahead and add that. And then what we can do is we can just kind of, oh, yeah, that's actually not too shabby. A little bit heavy, though. Let's go ahead and bring down the opacity rather considerably. Ooh, it's really dense. Even though the target strength is 0.06 and the opacity is 0.073, it's still super dense. That's interesting. Oh, I get it. It's just a really, really dense detail mesh. I mean, a really, really dense texture ends up being considerably denser than it actually looks. You can see how that's a single object right there. Problem with this texture is that it's going to be really obvious, so we'll go ahead and try it out, and then we'll see whether or not I can get it to feel okay. Rick Metalster says he's imagining a pulsating light near those rocks. Why? I mean, I'm curious. There's plenty of hologram stuff that's going to happen in this game, so it's possible, but I don't really know what you're talking about. Oh, he thinks it would just look good to have a pulsing rock near those lights. A pulsing light near those rocks. So if we go down into the fog and take a look at the grass here, you can see how it's not really very convincing. We got some billboard problems. And this is why I don't know that we're going to be able to use the painter, the detail painter. It's not intended for such close examination. It's intended for very specific camera angles and quite a bit of distance. So that's why I, sort of don't think we're going to end up using it. If I am going to use it, we're going to have to probably paint it as a tree rather than as grass. Anyway, let's delete all this. I don't need it. I can, however, put in a sparking light. That sounds like fun. Let's go ahead and spend a couple of minutes on that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to tweak some of these objects because what I want is, this is just too high. We'll move it down a little bit. What I want is this thing. Duplicate that, bring it on in, and we'll move it into position. So this is an example of a destroyed HAB. It's just a quick little thing I threw together. It's not the final product or anything. But the idea is that when you scan it, it turns into a full HAB as a hologram. So what we'll do is we will put it here, and then we will create some nice flashing effects. Because the particle systems don't catch the lighting, we're going to want to make sure that we don't do it towards the cascade, just because it will look really bad when it's not catching the light properly. So we got the... we're going to go ahead and create two elements in here. Create empty. This is going to be broken. For the broken one, we're going to want to put in the ruin like this. Now there is a particle system built on here. All it does is add crap to these various objects, which is fine. But we're going to want to create a sparking light. So that's going to require two things. It's going to require a light, and it's going to require a particle effect. So put that here, and what we'll do is move it towards the rock. We'll just put it like inside, on the edge rather. I don't want it to be blocked by, there we are, like this. And then that's going to be a light that'll flash on and off. Right now we do not have a flasher. So let's go ahead and create one. I think we should call it a flickerer rather than a flasher, for reasons that are reasonably obvious. So what we'll do is we will drop the flickerer onto the point light. And the idea of a flickerer is that it pulses. So public animation curve off delay, or on delay and then off delay. On delay. There we go. And then what we'll do is we'll make these and this is the same thing over here. Here we are. And then what we'll have is a counter, public float counter. And then we'll have a public float. Oh, it's not necessary. There we are. We'll have a public bool toggle. So the idea is we're going to have two Unity events, or maybe even three. Two is probably better. We're going to have a Unity event that happens when we're on, and a Unity event that happens when we turn off. On, and on, off. Perfect, right? So what we'll do is we will go ahead and have a command called next. Public void next. Go ahead and make this true. So here in next, we're going to say toggle equals not toggle. If toggle on dot invoke, and counter equals on delay, no, off delay dot evaluate random dot range. Else, oh no, my eye just got really itchy. Same thing, but off. Why is it underlined? Oh, ran out of value, my bad. All right. Ooh, the temperature outside is rising. My poor little AC unit cannot keep up. It's about 80 in my room right now. It's about 100 outside. So that's fun. So this is all we really need to do to make this work, except for here an update where we say counter minus equals time.delta time, and then we also say if counter is less than or equal to 0, then next. Easy as pie, right? So that is going to be our flickerer. A very, very basic setup, works fine, and all we're going to do to test it is to set up the events to turn things on and off, specifically this light. Enabled. There it is. Boom. So if we hit play, we should now see a flickering light. It's really, really, oh, for some reason the on delay and off delay are not at the right spots. I think I screwed that up. This is 1.1 and this is 1.1. So we'll have to do it manually in this case. It's not a big deal. Just There we are. And then this guy here. There we go. This will manually edit down to 0.1. There we are. Let's go ahead and try that. Yeah, that's better. So now what we're going to do is create a particle effect. So just effects particle system. There we go. And we're going to make it zap. So for a zappy effect, we're going to want to point it away from the light like this. One of the other things we could do is make the particle effect actually contain lights. We can try it, see what happens. But we're going to want to make these zappier than they are right now. I think what we'll do is down here in the renderer, we're going to go ahead and turn it to none. And then we will turn on trails like this. Obviously, that's not what it's going to look like. But you can see how what happens is the trail produces this laser-like beam. But if we switch it over from the kind of trail that it is now to a ribbon, you get this sort of effect. See? Zap. So what we can do is create pulses of sparks, right? So if we change the emission from a certain amount like this to a certain amount like this, then what we get is kind of that kind of pulse. See? So when we do that, all we really need to do next is to change the shape from what it was to a burst spread. Now the reason we do that is because we don't want it to be the full width. Trying to figure out what... That's better. So what we're going to want is a much tighter radius. There we are. Now what we need is to make the particle effects start at different speeds, random between two constants. Let's make it 3 and 5. We're going to add in an actual renderer at some point here. Here. So we need to give it a trail material. We do not have a particularly suitable material at the moment, so we're just going to duplicate the indicator material and use this for our zap. Zap. So we'll just drop the zap in. Go down, go down. There we are, zap. It's not suitable. We'll go ahead and fix it up though. So the basic idea here is that the hollow indicator material has a strange pattern to it that doesn't really make any sense. So we're going to go ahead and see what's up here. Yeah, that's not going to work. We're going to change this material from whatever it is there to something that is a little bit more zappy. We're eventually going to have to create a lightning material, I think. But for now, we could just use... I'm trying to think. We might just be able to use a flat, opaque white, like a nothing at all. But I think it might be better to try the default particle. So what we're going to do here is we're going to change the ribbon so that instead of the UV map being the way it is, it's going to have a different texture mode. So here we've got a stretch, and that should work, but for some reason it's not. And I think it's because it's such a tightly bound up object. So let's bring the size down to 0.1. And we don't want 30, we want like 5. Maybe more than that. Try 8. I don't really know if this is working out. It's creating a weird spread. I don't think the burst mode is really doing its job. Just lower this and change it to random. I wonder what happens if we go with a loop. It's really not behaving. This should be pretty easy. It's not, however. For some reason, it's just garbage. Great. Rick Mendelsohn says, what is this? Can you test it? I can't test it because it's not ready yet. I'm trying to create some lightning effects, but for some reason, the ribbon isn't really working. So we're just going to turn off the ribbon. Or maybe what we'll do is we'll change it to particles, and we'll just create like zaps. And what we'll do is we will use a zappy alpha texture. We don't have one yet, but we will eventually. So what we'll have here is a random between two constants, 0.2 and 0.5. And so you can see that what we get is kind of a burst. And what we're going to want to do is change the color over lifetime so that it fades out. It's not exactly how I want it to look. I've done reasonable lightning effects before, but for some reason my brain isn't remembering how to do it. Either way, let's go ahead and take this color over trail. We can just change the color up here, the default color. We'll make it a kind of lightning blue. So another option we have is to add in lights. Now if we add in lights, we're supposed to give it a default light that it's supposed to be using. But I don't think it lasts long enough to worry about that, so let's turn it off. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to create a method for us to use this event to fire off a particle system emission. So what we would do is we would have particle system emit, and then we pass it, say, 5. And then over here in the particle system, we just turn off all emissions. Turn them off. Delete. I want to let me click on it. Thank you. Delete. 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 Fucking delete. Is there any spot on this I can use to select it so that it can be deleted? Apparently not. All right, so now let's try it out. Oh boy, that is ugly. That lightning effect is the worst lightning effect I have ever seen. All right, so there's a couple of problems with it. One is that what we're doing here is the shader is not the particle shader. It's the hollow indicator shader. So we're going to use an additive here. And I thought I changed this, but apparently I didn't. I wonder if I accidentally changed the hollow indicator. That would be embarrassing. Well, let's just double check that I didn't accidentally screw up the hollow indicator, because I would feel pretty dumb. I didn't. That's fine. So now we've got this particle system. It still should be pretty bad. I'm going to add in some noise just to let it kind of whip around a little bit. I don't see the lightning effects at all. I am a little bit worried that that might cause some seizures, which isn't really my intention. So maybe I will... Maybe I'll just change the on delay so it's not quite so aggressive. But we didn't get any particle effects out of this, so let's change this pulse back to like 5 here and just see what it looks like. So what we can see here is it's... Oh, the trail... Oh, awesome! Never mind. I had the wrong idea. Cool. Cool beans. Okay, so we're going to fix up what I just did, because it turns out that the trail isn't just from the origin to the current location. It actually follows where the particle goes, and I didn't realize that. So what we're going to do is, this says it's texture mode stretch, but it's clearly texture mode tile. Oh, there's the problem. All right, so it's not a lightning effect. but it is a particle effect that is more like lightning than it used to be. Let's go ahead and increase the strength of the noise to, say, 2. And we'll increase the frequency. Yeah, that's better. And then we'll also decrease the speed a little bit. They're just a little bit too fast. That's good enough. So then we'll take this back down to 0 and hit play. That needs to hurt the player. Well, I'm not really sure what I'm doing. I'm just kind of playing around with effects. But I'm definitely having a problem where it's not actually emitting. Oh, there it is. It's just a really, really faint effect. Let's see if I can make it a little bit more aggressive. Make it a brighter blue. It's completely opaque, so I'm not sure why it's so faint. That's why it's faint. There we are. That's more like it. So obviously this particle effect is strictly temporary. That's not what we want it to look like at all. But I think that it is starting to go on the correct path in terms of being a placeholder effect. Rick Metalster says it looks a bit too fluid. I wonder if I can change the noise to be different. We'll have to find out here. So I think that having a full second is too long. So let's go down into here. So what we've got is damping. You can see this damping, how it blurs it. If we turn off damping, we should have a much more jagged result. I mean, it's still not realistic, but the only problem is now it appears to be moving in the wrong direction. I know I decreased the launch speed, but I didn't make it a negative number. Let's try that. Not 32, are you kidding? Just 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the point light to actually emit 8 of them. With point light, it's not the point light, it just happens to be on the point light. Maybe increase its speed. It's not that I need to increase the speed. It's that it needs to have a proper lightning effect. But what I can try is I can multiply the simulation speed by, say, 5. Let's try that. Yeah, that's definitely a little bit more lightning-y. And the only problem is it seems to be spawning kind of off rather than on. So let's go ahead and adjust the particle system so that it's... Why is it zooming up there? That's not where the particle system is. There we are. Let's go ahead and make it so that it looks like it's actually zapping in something that makes sense. So to do that, we're going to point it at the ground and move it in. So I'm thinking, I liked the way it was before with the on delay. I don't want people to have seizures. So I'm not really sure what sort of value I want out of that. But what I can do is just reduce the point light's intensity to 0.3. I think that will make it a small enough factor. I suppose I should probably ask someone who... But you can see how it doesn't really feel like it's causing us any harm. But for some reason, the particle effect seems like it's spawning in the wrong location, doesn't it? It certainly doesn't feel like it's moving down in the way I think it's supposed to. I'm not sure why. I mean, obviously the noise is a factor. Can I make it so the noise gets applied more Um, no, I can't make it apply the noise differently over the course of the span of the life. That's unfortunate. You know what? That's actually not too bad. I kind of am okay with this. Now I've dampened the light considerably. What I might do is make it so that instead of turning the light on and off, we adjust the light's intensity. Rick Metalster says he wants to increase the speed. I don't want to increase the lightning speed anymore. I think that's what I want it to be like. I'm actually surprised at how good that looks, given that I'm using a soft ball as our visual. Obviously, what we'll do is we'll have an actual mesh of some kind that's like some kind of damaged electrical box or something. But for an idea, I think that worked pretty well. Thanks for the impulse, the advice, Rick Metalster, because that was turned out to be an easier thing to do than I thought it would. The other thing we could do is we could add like puffs or something, but I think it's okay as is. You think I should have bubbles come out of it every time it sparks? I think that's what happens, right? I mean, I'm not sure that sparks would ever show up underwater now that I'm not really sure how that actually works. I mean, I know that seawater conducts the electricity quite well. Yeah, for now it looks fine. That's good enough for our purposes at the moment. And that's also good enough for today. I think we're done for the day. We did a lot of research into how to make this look better than it does. Let's just go over the effects one more time here. So over here we've got the entrance. You can see how there is a pale bit of fog stuck in the entryway, just to make it clear that there's something over there even in the dark. As we come over here, we come into what used to be a completely barren area. It's still quite barren, there's no plants or anything, but it no longer feels fake. We've got plenty of silt, and we've got some stone outcroppings. We've got particle effects dotting this, not in the best possible way, but we can adjust that some other day. And of course we've got some sparks. If we want to pull attention to this object, though, we should really just adjust the whole thing, because I was doing it in a different sort of pattern. I was thinking about it differently. We'll just move it like this. Now we'll be able to actually see the sparks. Yeah, there we are. I'm going to take a screenshot or two, and then we'll call it a day. So if you have any final questions or thoughts, let me know. I'm trying to get it right when it's... Oh, maybe that was good. Let's try it. Rick Meadows says, can't you make the lightning stay lit? Well, so the problem is that I can make the lightning stay... Well, let's go ahead and try it. I set the lifetime to quite a low amount. But what I can do is I can change it, and then I can put in some damping velocity over lifetime here, like this. I think that will also affect... let's go ahead and see. I think that will also affect the noise value. Let's find out. I can't see it. Is the damping too high? It's not even spawning in. What the hell? Go. I don't know why, but it's decided that it's not going to spawn in anymore. That's fucking weird. Oh, I'm just an idiot. The problem is that I'm an idiot. So let's try that again, not in play mode. You moron. So, once again, let's do that limit velocity over a lifetime here. Let's hit play. So that's what it looks like now. What we can do is we can set this to be like 0.5. So the problem is that you can see how it continues to just kind of zap along forever. What we actually want it to do is stop. So this is what it looks like when I tell it to stop moving. That's just with raw speed damping. I wonder what happens if I use drag instead. No, drag isn't doing anything. For some reason, they seem to coil back home, which is very strange. Now, obviously, this is way too many because I was playing around. It doesn't appear that this actually affects the noise, which isn't terribly useful for me. Oh, I guess it does affect the noise. The problem is it seems to just make the noise turn into loops. I'm not sure what's going on here. I don't know if I can make it stick around. It seems to be really quite tough to tell it to stop wobbling. Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and leave it as it was. It's not worth the pain to try and get it to work. But what I do want to do is see if I caught it in that. Oh great, new Twitter. How do I send a tweet on new Twitter? There doesn't appear to be a tweet button. Oh, there it is. It's at the bottom on the left, of course. I didn't really catch it, did I? Not very well. Let's try it again. Let's get nice and close. Nope. Nope. That. Got it. No, it doesn't really look good. It might be something that I have to take a GIF of. Yeah, I'll take a GIF. I have to take a GIF off screen because it doesn't really work when I am recording. Anyway, thanks for your help, everybody. We'll go ahead and I guess I'll just take one screenshot of like the whole setup, just to show that it's not incredibly stupid anymore. But then we will call it a day. I'm trying to get the lightning in here at least a little bit. Nope. Nope. Let's see if that caught it. No, not really. Yeah, it must have caught it. Yeah, okay, that's good enough. Working on how levels might look. screenshot Saturday or Saturday screenshot. I can't remember. There we are. And once again, we're going to want to do that over here as well. No, don't discard it. All of these pages that are like, oh my gosh, your mouse wandered 8 pixels off of the thing that you're typing in. You must want to discard it. No, not really. I kind of want to keep it. All right, well, thanks for your help, everybody. It was a pretty good session, and I will see you on Wednesday if you care to come back. Hopefully it will no longer be steadily getting hotter in my room. I think it's about 85 now. See you around. Bye. Where's the stop button?